We're going to go over the basics of using Lightroom, starting with just a simple overview and then how to organize and set up your catalog. So just for initial clarity, there are two flavors of Lightroom available for computers. One is called Lightroom Classic, the other is called Lightroom. For this course, we will be using Lightroom Classic, and you can tell really easily which one you're using by seeing the interface and the controls. So you'll see here in Lightroom Classic, which we'll be using, we have all these extensive controls and adjustments. We are going to learn almost all of these, which will just keep going and going. As opposed to here in standard Lightroom, you can see it's a much more simplified interface with fewer controls. Essentially what Lightroom is, or I should say Lightroom Classic used to be called Lightroom, and Lightroom Plain used to be called Lightroom Mobile, which was available primarily for iPads. Now is sort of leading towards integrating. Lightroom Mobile is just called Lightroom, and Lightroom for computers is called Classic, because I guess using a computer is sort of retro now. I think that this version of Lightroom will catch up with Lightroom Classic, but for the time being, Lightroom Classic offers much more sophisticated editing control. Another key difference between the two is that Lightroom Plain is a cloud editor only, which means that you can only keep files in it which are synced to your Creative Cloud account, which is fine if you're not generating that many files. But I think that if you're considering using Lightroom for either just taking extensive personal pictures, or if you're using it for any sort of commercial work where you're really racking up a lot of files, you will have to pay for progressively bigger accounts, the same way you would if you were syncing everything on Dropbox or Google Drive or anything like that. Lightroom Classic does have some syncing functions that you can create so that your files can be synced and you can access them on mobile devices and whatnot. But you can also save your files on your computer or on external hard drives. So I assume most of you for this class will be working on your own computer, but you may either not want to purchase the software yourself, or you may find that your own computer might not be powerful enough for some of the tasks you want to do. If that's the case, you can always use computers on campus. Most of the computers in the libraries will have all the Adobe Creative Cloud software installed on them, and there's also a computer lab in the humanities which you can arrange access to, which has some very powerful machines. If you're working with Lightroom on other machines, or even if you're working between multiple machines of your own, like a desktop and a laptop, it's important to understand where your catalog and your files are stored. So what we're going to do now is we're going to assume that we're creating a catalog that you'll use on multiple computers. So in the Finder here, I'm selecting this external hard drive, which should be formatted to FAT or exFAT, and I'll post a separate thing about that if anyone needs to do that. A lot of hard drives come formatted NTFS, which is only Windows compatible. FAT and exFAT are compatible with both Windows and Macs. So in here, I'm going to create a folder and just give it my name. In fact, I think that might even be redundant. I think Lightroom will create another folder within it, but that's fine. So here in Lightroom, the first thing we're going to do is just set up a new catalog. Now again, I'm going to select my hard drive, and I know I just created that folder a moment ago, but I think that we didn't need it, so I'm just going to call the catalog Gregory Verschbau, and I'm going to save it right into the folder, and it should create a folder called Gregory Verschbau. So I'm not going to back up this other catalog, I'm just going to skip. Backing up catalogs, I should say, is not for backing up your work, it's for backing up your settings and adjustments. Well, I guess that is your work, it's not for backing up your pictures. So I can see that I set up my new catalog properly because right at the top of the window and right in the corner here, it says my name. Now if I go to my hard drive, I can see it's created a folder called Gregory Birchfield. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that initial folder. That was an unnecessary step. In this folder, we have these files, which you may not see. They're usually hidden. And then we've got this one called lrcat and this one called preview data. The catalog file is going to save every adjustment you make. The data file is going to save previews for quick viewing of your images. Before I leave this folder, I'm just going to say that if you use your catalog, if you have it installed on an external hard drive and you want to switch to another computer, you open this file rather than just going straight to Lightroom, and it'll open Lightroom wherever you were last working with all your files ready for you. It'll just be like your Lightroom, regardless of which computer you open it on. So a little bit more about Lightroom. Lightroom is a file organizer or even a file manager. I guess that's the same thing, and also a non-destructive image editor. So similar to programs like iPhoto or iTunes, it will actually organize your pictures both in folders and in a library that indexes their locations, which allows for very effective searching through your pictures. You can also create things like virtual folders in the form of collections, which we'll learn about. A non-destructive editor means that it never actually will change your original file. Any adjustments you make to pictures are essentially just saved in history and reapplied when you open those pictures. Lightroom has a number of modules. We're not going to really use all the modules in the class, but the important ones to know about are Library, which is the interface for navigating and doing some minor edits. Develop, which is the interface for really doing in-depth edits on a picture. And we're going to skip Map, Book, Slideshow, and Print, which allows you to set up pictures for printing or to export them as grids. Now, to begin the import process to actually get some pictures in here, I'm going to insert a camera card into the computer. If you don't have a card reader on your computer, that's fine. You can either get an external card reader, or you can simply use the wire that came with your camera to plug your camera into the computer. So putting the camera in, the card in has automatically opened the import dialog, but if I were to just cancel for a moment, I can also click in the bottom corner on import. Now right off the bat, you might see there's a mix of files here. Some of them are CR2. There's one file here that's NEF. CR2 is just Canon RAW 2 is what it stands for. NEF is for Nikon electronic file, I believe. They're just proprietary extensions. Sony calls raw files ARW. Fuji calls them RAF. I'm not even sure what those acronyms stand for. If your camera is set to RAW, the files will come out in these different formats, but it doesn't matter because the software will support all of them. So this import dialog, it's important to just take a moment here because there are a lot of options, and it's important every time you import to make sure that you've selected these correctly. So first up, we've got our source, and it's looking at the card, and that's fine. Another thing is we've got some options here. We can copy the files off the card, we can move files, we can add files, and we can copy as DNG. So moving files, which is an option it's not giving us right now, means that Lightroom will move the files to new locations on your computer. So If you have pictures that are just all in one big folder, if you set it to move, Lightroom can reorganize them by date for you, just as an example. Add means that the pictures will be added into your catalog, but they'll stay exactly where they are on your computer. So if you have your pictures organized some way already that you like on your computer, but you want Lightroom to see them, add is the option for you. Copy as DNG will copy the files over, but also convert them into DNG, which stands for digital negative, and that is another RAW format that is owned by Adobe, but I believe is open source. So some cameras actually produce them. Copying as DNG will slow down your file transfer a little bit. It'll make for a longer import, but the benefit of it is it will actually make your files slightly smaller and a little more efficient at containing metadata like keywords and things you may add to them. Another advantage of DNG is if you have a really new camera, the RAW file might not be compatible with an older RAW image editor, but the DNG file probably will if you convert it. So right up here in the top corner is probably one of the most important things to pay attention to, and it's a common place where mistakes are made. And this is the location where your pictures are going to be imported to. So you should always check the location. Now, if you want to work on a folder within your pictures folder on your computer, if it's your own computer, that's fine. Because I'm keeping this catalog on an external drive, I'm going to select the drive. I'm going to select my folder that has the Lightroom catalog in it, and I'm going to create a new folder in there and just call it photography. And in fact, while I'm here, I'm going to back up so I can see that photography folder, and I'm going to create another new folder and call it export. And that's something that will be useful later. So I'll go back to this photography folder, and I've chosen that now. So I can see vol, the name of my hard drive, reverse file, photography, the folders are correct. So down here we have another set of options. We can build previews as the pictures come in. Creating high resolution previews, 1:1 is the highest resolution, means that you'll be able to zoom in on the pictures and not wait for them to load. The downside is that your catalog file will be much bigger and the import process will be much slower. I'm just going to leave the previews at minimal. Smart Previews is an interesting function. It allows you to edit pictures in your catalog even if you don't have access to the files. Again, this is at the cost of using a lot of extra hard drive space, so I'm going to leave that unchecked too. This option, don't import suspected duplicates, is really incredibly useful. It's one of the main reasons that I like to import my files through Lightroom rather than just dragging them into a hard drive. This essentially means that if you have made 200 pictures and imported them, and then shot 500 more pictures without having erased the previous ones, Lightroom will recognize that and it will only import your new pictures. I find this particularly useful traveling because I can just keep my pictures on the camera card and the computer, and that way have sort of an extra backup. So this option makes second copy. If you want to set up another hard drive and make another copy of your files to that drive, that's another great way to make an additional backup. Add to collection, we're not going to worry about right now. File renaming, there's a lot of different templates you can use, which we'll see when we look at the export dialog in some of the other tutorials. I personally never use this. I just leave the files with their original name. Here you can apply some special effects during import. I think for now we can leave that alone. Metadata, we're not going to worry about that. Keywords can be handy if you were photographing for a specific assignment. You might want to add that keyword to the assignment, like typology or something like that. I could add the keyword demo, so I know that I imported these for demo. Here in destination, this is really important. All these things are really important. You can choose to organize your pictures in various ways. The standard is to organize them by date, And then here it shows you just the date format. And this is really whatever works best for you. Some people really prefer to have the files in different folders depending on the day. So here each folder will have a specific date. Within 2018, there will be a folder called 2018 June 22nd, for example. You could also just have it be called June 22nd within 2018. The mode I like to use is just the year and the month. If I want to look for specific dates within that month, I can search the metadata. So I think it's fine to just break up the pictures by month. Some people prefer to use the months numerically, like 6 instead of June. I personally prefer to just see the name of the month, but this is totally your preference. It's a good idea, though, to stick to one, or to pick one and stick to it, I mean. So down here, this just gives you a preview of where these pictures are going to go. It shows they're going to go into a folder called photography. Well, first we see the hard drive vol, Gregory Vershbow, photography, 2017, September. So I'm going to go ahead and import. So I will say while this is importing, this looks fine. If the import of the files seems extremely slow, something you can try is in the Creative Cloud app, you can choose this option, older versions, and install an older version of Lightroom Classic. I haven't checked 7.3.1 yet. I personally found that 7.3 there was some bugs with the import, so I just, to eliminate the problem, downgraded to Lightroom 7. So hopefully you won't need to do that, but if you do run into any issues, that seems to be the simplest solution. So now you can see our files are imported. Here we can see in the library, they're in 2017 in a folder called September, and 31 just means there's 31 files in there. This option here, previous import, is actually a collection. In this case, all the pictures were taken in the same month, but this will just show you everything you've imported, and it's not a real folder. So if you want to see the pictures the way they're organized, you can either find them here, or you can right-click on a picture, control-click on the Mac if you haven't set up right-click, and do this option, go to folder in library. If you want to see where the picture actually is on the computer, you can always choose this option, show in Finder, or I believe reveal in Explorer if you're on Windows, and then we can see the actual folder to see that the files are there. So if I were to move a file out, so I'm going to drag this picture of a rock up to 2017, tells me it's going to move it on the disk. You can see that when I look at the folder 2017, it shows me everything, because Lightroom will show you all the files within the folder, including the containing folders. But if I go to just September 30th, that rock disappears. I can also see, if I show in Finder again, that the file has actually moved. So when you move files in Lightroom, they will move on your normal folder structure as well, in your normal folder structure as well. Now, it does not work automatically the other way. So if I drag this picture back into September, now when I go to Lightroom, there's a little exclamation point next to this picture to show that Lightroom isn't sure where this picture is. And if I try to develop, weirdly it is letting me develop anyway, but normally it wouldn't. So to revise the placement of the picture, What I do is I can right-click on this folder 2017 and choose this option, Synchronize Folder, and it's found one file out of place, so I click Synchronize, and now everything is organized again. It's better to avoid this problem, though, by just moving your files within